Hello and welcome, everyone. Super excited to have you all here and looking forward to this conversation today. Several of you did submit questions ahead of time, so I'm excited about that, looking at what you're interested in gaining from this conversation. And of course, invite you to continue submitting questions. You can do that in the chat box, is the easiest. Alternatively, there is a Q&A. Either one is fine, and you can submit your question. I'll watch those as we go, and very much invite your input all the way through. This conversation is recorded. It will go on YouTube. Having said that, if you do want to come on live and ask your question with everyone, please put a note to me in the chat box. Let me know you want to come on live, and I am delighted to bring you in live. I think it adds value to the conversation when we have multiple voices in the room. So very much invite each of you to that. In the meantime, you see one hello in the chat box. Please feel free to put in where you are calling in from so we can get a sense of where people are from on the conversation. In the meantime, we'll get started. Our agenda for today, we'll talk about what is meaningful change, what is coaching. So we'll do some quick definitions. We'll say, how does coaching create meaningful change? How can you enhance results? Some tips and techniques for you and some resources. So we're playing with some definitions as a starting point. In the meantime, in the chat box, this is fun. Let's see, New Hampshire, Maryland, Denver, Lexington, Kentucky. So a couple of you have been putting in. That's awesome, from all over the place. And I am guessing we've got a few people from outside the US as well. Let's see, South Carolina, Dallas, New York. This is great. All right, so definitions. I simply got on the internet and went and did some looking. So the free dictionary says meaningful change means having meaning, function, or purpose, a meaningful discussion, showing or conveying meaning, especially without words, a meaningful glance. So that is meaningful. Then we go to change. What is change? To cause to be different. Change the spelling of a word is an example. To give a completely different form or appearance to. Transform. Change the yard into a garden. So what's meaningful change? To purposely make different. Coaching, I'm guessing most of you are familiar with this definition, comes straight from the International Coaching Federation. It is partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So when you put those two together, what are we talking about? Well, it's meaningful to them. It's change. It's making something different. And it's in a process that is inspiring the client to maximize their potential. So the coach partners with the client. The client defines what they want. They get to explore their opportunities, consider their challenges, list their resources. You're familiar with this process. They develop their strategies, plan their action steps, manage their accountability, and acknowledge their own progress and success. And a big part of what we're doing as a coach is supporting these steps happening as they move forward. We're there as their partner. Who's actually creating the meaningful change? The client is. As a coach, we hold our client as fully capable and fully empowered for creating the change they want. So if we explore further, I got online and looked up creating meaningful change. And I found this on Inc. I thought it was pretty great. They said, first off, you paint the picture. That sounds familiar to us in the coaching world because we talk about, okay, what do people want? And what does that ideal outcome look like, sound like, feel like? And so that's painting the picture. We want to know not just what, but why and how. So in coaching, our default as coaches may sometimes be to the how. How are we going to do that? And we know when we read the competencies we have as coaches, when we read the PCC markers, we go through the process for credentialing, that the why is so essential to the who. What does this mean to the client? What's important about this? What are the beliefs, the values behind it that make it significant? And we do know we want the internal motivation. Keep people in mind. Now, sometimes we think about, okay, if it's just one client creating this change, it's just the one person. Well, there's more people involved. They have people in their world, whether it's people in the workplace, stakeholders, or it's family and friends. And whatever change they're making is going to impact people around them. And so being aware of that, noticing that, communicating with transparency. So for that individual, it's sharing with people what they want. Now, in the coaching relationship, of course, we want transparency there because in that conversation, transparency means the client is truly exploring, which supports their awareness and ultimately their motivation in terms of moving forward. Emphasize the benefits. And sometimes we forget about that. Think how often we think about change we want and we plan it and we get started and then we drop off. We fall off along the way. So, emphasizing the benefits keeps us motivated, keeps us excited, keeps us focused on the outcome that we want. So, setting outcomes and goals. And you probably remember from your coach training class that we talk about when you set those goals, you want to know what you're moving toward, the ideal end that you're going to. You want to know the internal motivation of the person doing it and how they're proactively making it happen. So some of you in your things ahead of time said, okay, I want some tips. Take that word tip towards internal proactive right there. Groom change agents. Okay, so that's a fascinating one. Now, here you're commonly talking at an organizational or a business level. And I'm going to say it's true for individuals too. They themselves are their own change agent, and the people around them that support them moving forward are change agents. And so if you're working with a team or a group, you're going through all of these steps and you're aware of others around that team or group in the organization that they also want supporting them. And of course, the people within the team or group grooming them as agents for this change. I like this one. Use training wheels. When we think about making something happen, it isn't going to be from 0 to 100 instantaneously. It's a process and it takes time. So, knowing what the baby steps are along the way, that's our training wheels, the little things we can do to get started and having those safeguards in place. Check in regularly. How's it going? What's working? What do you want to adjust? And then, of course, make it happen. Keep up the momentum when you make it happen so that it continues, and lead by example. This supports the next change that's coming down the pike. Great article on ink. Another great article to share with you, or a couple other things to share with you that I found when I was doing some homework for this. Dr. Phil said, the way to get started is to recognize what's really important to you. Who are you? And what is your strategy for living? Makes a lot of sense when we think about bringing coaching in. Awesome-ish. I thought that was pretty fun. Set yourself up for success, change your mind, own your goal, and change your worldview. Tiny Buddha said, get very clear on your own values and motivations for change. Prepare a comeback. Seek out supporters. Filter your updates. be a resource, and push through it. So, a lot of really great insights. So, I'm curious from all of you, do me a favor, put a note in the chat box with these different things we've gone through. What's jumping out at you? What resonates for you? What do you like? What do you want to add to it? Or what's a theme you're noticing? Let's get some input and comments going in the chat box and share with that. In the meantime, talking about it in terms of the coaching relationship, what are we doing to enhance results? The coach, of course, is developing coaching competencies. That's huge if we're going to be effective supporting clients. We have our ethics in place and we stay true to the coaching process. The client is developing, hey, what is their attitude? They're figuring out their action steps and planning the accountability. So this is great. A couple of comments, setting up for success. Yes, absolutely. And then the tip, the towards internal and proactive. Awesome. And to me, when I was reading these, it felt like it was a common theme and it felt like it paralleled very much what we learn and approach in terms of the coaching relationship. Okay, and we've got somebody that loved the awesomest words. That's great. Bringing meaning has to connect into your passion and or the passion of those who will be driving change. Yes, this is great. All right. Loving the comments there. That's awesome. So, how can we enhance results? Let's keep digging into this. Be intentional. And this speaks to what you're all saying there, what those different articles we're sharing before coaching with our training ethics and agreement, during coaching, being present to who the client is, focusing on their priorities, supporting their planning, long-term strategies as the client completes coaching. Be confident. And this is a big one. As a coach, you've got to be confident in yourself as a coach, confident in the coaching process, and confident in the client, truly believing in them and their ability to make it happen. So, curious, everyone, what you experience in that regard. I find that oftentimes that I truly believe in that client and in their ability to make it happen supports them in believing in themselves, which in turn supports their success. And that confidence in the client spreads and builds and grows. And I'm curious whether you've all noticed that, how you believing in the client impacts them believing in themselves. And love to get some comments on from in that regard. Just how does that land with you? What do you notice? Ultimately, enhancing results in terms of creating meaningful change is really about being a coach and supporting people and the questions that we ask so that they do move in that direction. Moving now into tips and techniques. Oh, good. I'm starting to get some comments here. This is awesome. I have definitely experienced this. Also, my level of energy impacts the clients. Yes, such a true statement. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Belief is infectious. Agreed. And confidence is so important. Very much the case. Very much the case. Excellent. All right. So, preparation. The training that we do, the ethics and agreements that we do, these are our preparation as coach. Our presence, what are we talking about? Focusing completely on the client and the plan. We're going to plan with the client how we're going to work together. And ultimately, it's the client process that is being planned. We're co-creating that coaching relationship. And how do they want that to flow? How do they want it to work to truly support them? And then we partner. And our role in that partnership is the questions so that the client develops their strategy and actions and designs their own accountability for the follow through. So, if we pull this together and we apply the coaching competencies specifically, what does that mean and look like? It means we demonstrate ethical practice, the confidentiality in this conversation. So, when we think about what's happening for a client, the change that's coming down the pike, it may be something they're choosing intentionally and creating for themselves. Alternatively, it may be change that's happening in their organization. And it's possible they love it and look forward to it. And it's also possible they don't like it and they're uncomfortable with it. So when we set it up with the client that confidentiality is protected, they can explore that openly. The change that they design, they can explore all the different possibilities for it. And designing what it is they want that change means different things are feasible. So instead of just jumping onto the very first thing, it's really talking that through, working it out. Hey, does that make the most sense? What's a different possibility? What's a different thing that's important or a different process here? And when they know it's confidential, it gives them the space to explore all the different possibilities before committing to it and expressing that commitment to others. Where once they've committed to it with others, it's like, okay, that's it. That's what it is. So the confidentiality to explore that. The other confidentiality, if it's a change in the organization, they can openly talk about what they like or don't like about it. They can openly talk about, okay, what happens if I get on board or don't get on board? And how's this going to come down the pike? The confidentiality is absolutely essential for them to have that conversation and sort through and figure it out. The coaching mindset, as coaches, we're open and we're curious. That openness and curiosity in turn is supporting the client, whether it's a change they've designed or a change they're dealing with where they work, because we're asking questions, we're exploring, we're getting more information. And in many cases, it may be a process of framing and then reframing and then doing that again in terms of what the change is, what it looks like, how it works. Being open and curious as a coach also supports the client being open and curious about what the potential is with the change. Establishing and maintaining agreements. Our focus here is client choice. So many of you know me and you've probably heard me say it a million times. The agreement happens in 3 phases. Phase 1 is what is coaching, that conversation. Phase 2 is the formal agreement. And then phase 3 is every single coaching session. What does the client want to focus on? What's success in this conversation to them? What do they believe has to be talked through to get there? And what does that mean to them? And all of those questions are client choice. We know from the credentialing process with ICF that until we ask all 4 of those questions, we can't even begin to coach the client because we haven't sorted through that. What I love about it is, okay, what do you want to focus on and how you know this conversation is successful really sets our overarching guide. Following up on that with, hey, what has to be talked through to get there? Creates the roadmap for the coaching session itself, which in turn is moving them toward the change they're creating. And then asking them what it means to them truly brings in that internal motivation of the client. Cultivating trust and safety. Of course, we've got to have that there. We've got to respect the client and we've got to support them. Sometimes the change is an exciting thing and we're affirming them and being cheerleaders as they go. Sometimes the change is something they're afraid of, and we've got to respect and support them through that as well. And when we respect and support the client, That's part of developing the rapport with them for having that open conversation. Maintaining presence, 100,000% focused on the client. And here's what's interesting. Part of that presence is really noticing what's going on for the client. Are they high energy? Are they low energy? What's behind that? What's driving that? We ourselves have got to stay grounded. We're adjusting to who the client is, and we're staying focused on them and how it's working for them. The listening actively with intention. So our intention is listening to understand within the client's context, understand their meaning, and the rephrasing. Listening goes further as well. We talk about listening cumulatively over time. So there are patterns of things that emerge over time. And as a coach, one of the things we do is share that observation with the client and ask their thoughts around the observation. They can take it or leave it. So if we notice something is happening, making the observation so that they can notice it and respond to it and do what they want with it. We listen for who they are and how they're approaching it and what their thinking is behind something. Very often a client has a story they're telling themselves. We all tell ourselves stories. That's reality for us. So when we tell ourselves a story, that impacts what's happening for us. If we're creating change and the story we're telling ourselves is, oh gosh, I don't like this, this is horrible, we could get stuck in that and have more resistance to it. So identifying what the story is behind it supports asking questions that move the client forward. And those questions, that's how we evoke awareness as coaches. When you're talking about creating meaningful change, the awareness is about what the different potential and opportunities are, what the end game looks like, who else is involved, how other people are impacted, how other people are supporters, and considering different possibilities as well. And then, of course, facilitating client growth. Our eighth competency is asking the client what they are learning, what they're learning about themselves, what they're learning about their situation, and then asking how are they taking that learning and applying it to what they're doing moving forward, and getting very specific with their strategy and their plans moving toward that change. So that has been a lot of information that I'm throwing at you. And I'm curious and want to invite your questions at this point. Some of you submitted things ahead of time. I'm hoping some of that got answered. And I'm looking for additional questions because I threw out a lot of content really quick. What are you wondering about? And I'm watching that chat box. I'm watching that question panel. Let's see. Your positive energy is important to their success. Yes, that's the last comment we've got in there. That's a good one. What are your questions and what else do you want to explore in this conversation? All right, so I'm getting quiet. What I have up next, a couple of tips and techniques for you. Coaching questions that you can use. Ask them, what are the reasons for the change? What are the reasons not to change? I love this one when somebody gets stuck, they're not moving forward, because there is a benefit to not moving forward. There's a benefit to staying stuck. Who are your stakeholders? Asking them that. What are your resources? What is your level of commitment? And this is an insightful question in some cases, because sometimes people are really not that committed to the change, and you've got to explore that. And other times they're so committed that they're going to move past those barriers. And then how do you want to manage accountability? These are examples of questions we can use. What other questions are all of you thinking make sense when you're supporting clients creating meaningful change? I'll give you some space there. In the meantime, resources for you. Of course, the International Coaching Federation is a resource, the Center for Coaching Solutions, which provides coaches for organizations, and then the Center for Coaching Certification. So the International Coaching Federation website is coachingfederation.org. At coachcert.com, there is information on training as well as information on the coaching. I love this question. That's a great one. What are you hoping to achieve with the change? Nice question. Good example. What barriers do you anticipate? Who do they affect? How might they be addressed? Nice. These are really good questions. The group that's here, there's a lot of expertise in this room. And so it's fabulous to have all of you jumping in and engaging, because these are great. Now, here's a tip for everybody. The chat box where you're seeing all these really great comments, you can actually save these questions and comments. And the way you do it is there are 3 dots down in the lower right-hand corner of the chat box. And when you click on those dots, it'll give you the option to save the chat. My recommendation is doing that after everything's there, because if you do it before, it'll stop the save at that point in time. Oh, sorry, got ahead of myself there. Let's go back to this. So the Center for Coaching Solutions is something some of you are familiar with. I know some of you are coaches that have done work in this space. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So some of you have graduated from the Center for Coaching Certification and can be available to be a coach and provide coaching services. What's important to know, there is a business development team that does contract with organizations to place coaches in those contracts, and those coaches are drawn from our graduates. So if you haven't done it yet and you do want to be part of that, there is a coach bio form that we have you fill out, an agreement we have you fill out on your coach login page. In addition to this being something that's available to those of you in organizations, this is something for those of you doing coaching services that you could be part of the client base or the coach base that we support with. Let's see. Sometimes you have clients ask you what you would do if you were in their shoes. Oh, that's a great question. So if the client says, hey, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? And the response is, what do you think I'd suggest if you were me? And have them answer the question themselves. That's a great way of doing it. I sometimes say, well, if I were in your shoes, what advice do you have for me? So very similar concept. So love that question. Excellent example. Resources available to you. The blogs on the website, the books, the free webinars, and we're here for a quick check-in. And then of course the outsourcing that's available. In terms of the blog, there's a couple of new articles there every week. And if you want to do a guest blog and put it up there, please send it. We'd love to have you there. The books come out once a year. I know that I see some of you here have actually done a chapter in one of these books. That's awesome. If you haven't yet, it's a fabulous experience where you are intentionally learning to write for publication. You become a published author, and in the copyright of the book, we grant you rights to your chapter so that you can turn around and take your chapter and use it as a white paper or build on it and make it a full book. So it's a really fun process. In addition to having lots of expertise from lots of great coaches and all those different chapters. And then of course, the webinars like this. And if you ever want to be a guest presenter, let us know. definitely interested in having you share your expertise. Interested in getting a question answered, we're available for a quick check-in to do that. And of course, we outsource the coaching programs, the training, and then coaching itself. So that's available. What's up for you? If you have questions about your coach training, about coaching programs, that kind of thing, I'm happy to schedule a conversation with you about that. In the meantime, on a direct level, for yourself, what is your action plan? Whether you're still completing coach training, you're going to go back and review what you have, be intentional with your skills. Hopefully, you have a coach as well. And a great opportunity for all of you is we have groups on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Basecamp. You can connect with other graduates and do a trade and coach each other. So that's a fabulous opportunity for you. And then support is available to you. I'm happy to hang around and answer additional questions. I do want to have a chance to say thank you. Glad to have you here and exploring this. Very much interested in what else we can do to support you in your work as a coach. So, thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. Glad this was helpful to you. And yes, good information. Excellent. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the community. So, absolutely love that. And it seems like we're complete in terms of the comments that I'm getting. So, thank you, everyone. Have a fabulous rest of your day. And we'll look forward to connecting again in the future. Take care.